At Jefferson High School, there was one rule everyone knew, but nobody talked about. Stay out of Tyler Brooks' way or face the consequences. This quiet school in downtown looked peaceful from the outside, but inside the halls, fear ruled everything. Tyler Brooks, the son of the richest family in town, believed he owned every classroom, every hallway, and every student who walked through those doors. One look from him could make an entire class go silent. One word from him could ruin someone's whole day. But this September, something changed when a new face walked through the front doors. Marcus Williams, a quiet young man who moved here from the South Side with his grandmother. He wore simple clothes, carried old books, and spoke softly when teachers called his name. What nobody knew was that behind those calm eyes lived a secret. Since he was 10 years old, his grandfather had taught him self-defense in their small backyard. Not to hurt people, but to protect himself and others when words weren't enough. From the first day Marcus sat down, a war was about to begin. It wasn't just between two students. It was between someone who used fear to control others and someone who refused to be controlled. When the truth finally came out, Jefferson High would never be the same again. Before we start this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss our next stories where good always wins over evil. Marcus Williams never wanted to stand out. He wasn't the smartest kid in class or the best athlete on the field. He was just a 17-year-old who moved to Jefferson High after his mom got a new job across town. His worn sneakers squeaked on the polished floors as he searched for room 204 on his first day. The hallways were filled with students laughing, talking, and rushing to their lockers. But Marcus walked alone, carrying his old backpack and looking for somewhere to fit in. What these students didn't know was that Marcus carried something special inside him. Every evening for 7 years, his grandfather had trained him in their tiny backyard. Not karate or boxing, but something his grandfather called smart fighting. It was about staying calm, reading people, and knowing when to act. Marcus, his grandfather would say, real strength isn't about hurting people. It's about protecting what's right and standing up when others can't. Those lessons happened every day until his grandfather passed away last year. Now Marcus carried those teachings like a quiet flame inside his heart. He practiced the moves in his bedroom, shadowboxing in the mirror, but never telling anyone about his skills. In a world where everyone wanted to show off, Marcus chose silence. Tyler Brooks was the complete opposite. Everyone at Jefferson High knew his name. His father owned 3 businesses in town and donated money to the school every year. His mother sat on the school board and decided which teachers kept their jobs. Tyler used this power like a weapon. He sat wherever he wanted, talked back to teachers, and made other students do his homework. The worst part was that nobody could stop him. "This is my school," Tyler would say with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Everyone here answers to me." Teachers looked the other way when Tyler caused trouble. The principal smiled and nodded when Tyler's father called. Other students either joined Tyler's group or stayed far away from him. Those who dared to speak up found their lockers vandalized or their names on lists that made them targets for Tyler's friends. Tyler had 2 main followers who did his dirty work. Jake and Danny were both bigger than most students and not very smart. They followed Tyler everywhere, laughing at his jokes and threatening anyone who didn't. Together, the 3 of them ruled Jefferson High like kings who never had to follow the rules. When Marcus walked into his first period English class, he chose a seat near the window. The morning light helped him see his notebook clearly, and he liked watching the trees outside. It was a small piece of peace in an unfamiliar place. Marcus opened his book, took out his pen, and started copying the notes from the board. He didn't notice Tyler watching him from across the room. Tyler saw something in Marcus that bothered him. While other new students looked nervous or tried hard to make friends, Marcus seemed comfortable being alone. He didn't laugh at Tyler's jokes or look impressed by his expensive clothes. To Tyler, this felt like disrespect. In his world, everyone either feared him or wanted to be like him. Marcus did neither. "Who's the new kid?" Tyler whispered to Jake during class. "Marcus something," Jake replied. "Moved here from the poor part of town." Tyler's eyes narrowed. A poor kid who didn't show proper respect was exactly the kind of problem he knew how to solve. He started planning how to teach Marcus about the rules at Jefferson High. After English class, Marcus walked to his locker. The combination his grandmother wrote down worked on the third try. As he put his books inside, he heard footsteps behind him. "Hey, new guy," Tyler's voice cut through the hallway noise. Marcus turned around slowly. Tyler stood there with Jake and Danny behind him, blocking the hallway. Other students quickly moved away, not wanting to be part of whatever was about to happen. "I'm Tyler Brooks," Tyler said, expecting Marcus to look impressed. "My family basically runs this school." Marcus nodded once. "Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you," Tyler laughed. "That's it? Don't you know who I am? Should I?" Marcus asked calmly. The hallway got quieter. Students stopped walking and started watching. Nobody talked to Tyler Brooks like that. Jake and Danny stepped closer, waiting for Tyler's signal. "Let me explain how things work here," Tyler said, his voice getting louder. "I decide who sits where. I decide who gets to eat lunch where. I decide who gets to walk down these halls without problems. And right now, I'm deciding that you need to learn some respect." Marcus looked Tyler in the eyes without blinking. "I respect people who earn it." A few students gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh no," under their breath. Tyler's face turned red with anger. Nobody had ever spoken to him like this in front of other students. "We'll see about that," Tyler said through gritted teeth. "Jake, Danny, remember this face. We're going to teach our new friend here about Jefferson High tradition." The bell rang for next period. Students scattered quickly, not wanting to be late. Marcus closed his locker and walked to his next class like nothing happened. But inside, his grandfather's voice echoed, "When someone tries to scare you, Marcus, stay calm. Let them show you who they really are." That night, Marcus sat in his room doing homework. His grandmother knocked on the door and brought him hot chocolate. "How was your first day, baby?" she asked. "It was fine, Grandma," Marcus said. "Just getting used to a new place." But Marcus knew tomorrow would be different. He had seen the look in Tyler's eyes, the same look bullies had given him at his old school, the same look his grandfather had taught him to recognize as a warning. Marcus wasn't looking for a fight, but he wouldn't run from one either. As he practiced his defensive moves in the mirror that night, he whispered his grandfather's words, "Protect what's right, stand up when others can't." The next morning at Jefferson High felt different. Word had spread quickly about the new kid who talked back to Tyler Brooks. Students whispered in groups, phones buzzed with messages, and everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Marcus walked through the front doors at his usual time, but now eyes followed him down every hallway. In first period English, Marcus took his same seat by the window. Mrs. Peterson started writing on the board, but the class felt tense. Students kept looking between Marcus and Tyler, waiting for something to happen. Tyler sat in the back row with his friends, staring at Marcus with cold eyes. "Today we're reading about courage," Mrs. Peterson announced. "Can anyone tell me what courage means?" Tyler raised his hand with a smirk. "Courage is when someone knows their place and doesn't cause trouble for people more important than them." A few students laughed nervously. Mrs. Peterson frowned but didn't correct him. Marcus kept writing in his notebook like he didn't hear anything. "Anyone else?" Mrs. Peterson asked. Marcus raised his hand slowly. "Courage is doing the right thing even when it's hard or scary." The room went silent. Tyler's smirk disappeared. Mrs. Peterson smiled and nodded. "That's a wonderful answer, Marcus." After class, Tyler cornered Marcus at his locker again. This time, more students gathered to watch. Some held up their phones to record whatever was about to happen. "You think you're smart, don't you?" Tyler said, stepping closer to Marcus. "Making me look bad in front of the teacher." "I just answered her question," Marcus replied calmly. "Nobody asked you to show off," Jake added, trying to sound tough. "Yeah," Danny agreed. "New kids should keep their mouths shut." Marcus closed his locker and faced the three of them. "I'm not trying to cause problems. I just want to go to school." Tyler laughed loudly. Well, that's too bad. Because I have a problem with you. You don't show respect. You don't know your place. And you embarrassed me yesterday. I didn't embarrass you, Marcus said quietly. You embarrassed yourself. The crowd of watching students gasped. Someone whispered, "He's done for now." Tyler's face turned bright red with anger. That's it, Tyler snarled. You want to act tough? Meet me at the basketball court after school. We'll settle this the old-fashioned way. I don't want to fight you, Marcus said. Too bad, Tyler shot back. Because if you don't show up, I'll make your life miserable every single day until you transfer out of here. Your choice, new boy. Tyler walked away with Jake and Danny following behind him. The crowd of students slowly scattered, but everyone was talking. By lunchtime, the whole school knew about the challenge. Most students thought Marcus was crazy for standing up to Tyler, but some quietly admired his courage. In the cafeteria, Marcus sat alone at a corner table. He unwrapped the sandwich his grandmother made and tried to eat peacefully, but students kept staring at him. A few brave ones walked by and whispered, "Good luck," or "You're gonna need it." Across the cafeteria, Tyler held court at the best table with a crowd of students around him. He was talking loudly about how he was going to teach the new kid a lesson. His friends laughed and cheered him on. 3 o'clock at the basketball court, Tyler announced. Everyone's invited to watch me put this nobody in his place. But not everyone was on Tyler's side. In a quiet corner of the cafeteria, a small group of students had been watching everything unfold. These were the kids Tyler had bullied before, the ones who were too scared to fight back but secretly hoped someone would. Sarah Martinez, a junior who Tyler had humiliated last year, leaned over to her friend Ashley. Maybe someone will finally stand up to him. Are you crazy? Ashley whispered back. Tyler's going to destroy that new kid. You know what happened to Kevin when he tried to fight Tyler last year? Sarah nodded sadly. Kevin had stood up to Tyler over something small and ended up with a black eye and a reputation as a troublemaker. His parents had to move him to another school. But something felt different about Marcus. The way he stayed calm when Tyler yelled at him. The way he didn't back down but didn't escalate things either. Sarah had never seen anyone handle Tyler like that before. After lunch, word continued to spread. Teachers heard the rumors but pretended not to notice. They knew Tyler's father would cause problems if his son got in trouble, so they chose to look the other way. Principal Johnson got 3 phone calls about the planned fight, but decided to stay in his office and hope nothing serious happened. Meanwhile, Marcus went through his afternoon classes like it was any normal day. He took notes, answered questions when called on, and ignored the stares and whispers around him. But inside, he was preparing. Not for a fight exactly, but for whatever was going to happen at 3 o'clock. During his last class, Marcus thought about his grandfather's lessons. Violence should always be the last choice, Marcus. But if someone threatens you or tries to hurt innocent people, you have the right to defend yourself. The key is staying in control. Don't let anger make your decisions. Marcus had learned more than just self-defense from his grandfather. He had learned patience, discipline, and how to read people's intentions. Looking at Tyler over the past 2 days, Marcus saw someone who used fear and intimidation to control others. Tyler had probably never been in a real fight where someone fought back with skill and strategy. When the final bell rang at 2:45, students poured out of their classrooms and headed toward the basketball court behind the school. Word had spread so widely that even students from other grades were coming to watch. The court filled up quickly with excited teenagers holding phones and talking loudly about what was going to happen. Tyler arrived first, of course. He had changed into athletic clothes and was stretching dramatically, showing off for the crowd. Jake and Danny stood beside him like bodyguards, trying to look intimidating. Tyler's girlfriend and her friends cheered for him from the sidelines. "Where's the new kid?" Tyler called out loudly. "Did he chicken out and run home to mommy?" Some students laughed, but others looked toward the school building, waiting. At exactly 3 o'clock, Marcus walked calmly across the courtyard toward the basketball court. He hadn't changed clothes or tried to look tough. He just walked steadily forward with his backpack still on his shoulder. The crowd parted to let him through. Students held up their phones to record. Some looked excited, others looked worried. Marcus stepped onto the court and set his backpack down against the fence. "Well, well," Tyler said with a cruel smile. "Look who decided to show up after all. Ready to learn your lesson, new boy?" Marcus looked around at all the watching faces. Some students seemed hungry for violence. Others looked scared. A few, like Sarah Martinez, watched with hope in their eyes. "I told you I don't want to fight," Marcus said clearly so everyone could hear. "But if you insist, I'll defend myself." Tyler cracked his knuckles and stepped forward. Big words from a little nobody. "Let me show you how we handle disrespect at Jefferson High." But as Tyler moved closer, Marcus did something unexpected. Instead of putting up his fists or backing away, he stood perfectly still and took a deep breath. His grandfather's voice echoed in his mind. "Stay calm, read your opponent, and let them make the first mistake." The basketball court behind Jefferson High had never been this crowded. Nearly 200 students formed a circle around Marcus and Tyler, phones held high, voices buzzing with excitement. Teachers were nowhere to be seen, and the security guard who usually patrolled the area had mysteriously disappeared. Tyler's father's influence reached everywhere, even to the places that were supposed to keep students safe. Tyler rolled his shoulders and cracked his neck, putting on a show for the crowd. He had done this before, using public humiliation to break down anyone who dared challenge his authority. In his mind, this was just another performance, another chance to prove that the Brooks family ruled Jefferson High. "Last chance to apologize, new boy," Tyler called out loudly. "Get on your knees, say you're sorry, and maybe I'll go easy on you." The crowd stirred. Some students laughed and whistled. Others looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. Marcus stood quietly in the center of the circle, his breathing steady and controlled. He looked smaller than Tyler, thinner, like an ordinary student who had accidentally wandered into the wrong place. "I have nothing to apologize for," Marcus said simply. Tyler's smile turned ugly. "Fine. Jake, Danny, make sure nobody interferes. This is between me and the new kid." Tyler charged forward, swinging a wild punch aimed at Marcus's face. In that moment, everything his grandfather had taught him kicked in. Marcus shifted slightly to the right, and Tyler's fist sailed past his ear. Using Tyler's own momentum, Marcus stepped aside and let Tyler stumble forward past him. The crowd gasped. Tyler had thrown a hard punch and missed completely. He spun around, surprised and embarrassed, his face red with anger. "Lucky dodge," Tyler snarled. "Let's see you do that again." Tyler swung again, this time with his left hand. Marcus ducked smoothly under the punch and stepped backward, staying just out of reach. Tyler kept swinging, wild, angry punches that showed his frustration, but no real skill. Each time, Marcus moved just enough to avoid contact, making Tyler look clumsy and out of control. "Stand still and fight like a man," Tyler shouted. But Marcus stayed calm, remembering his grandfather's words about patience. Let your opponent wear himself out with anger while you stay focused and ready. After missing 6 punches in a row, Tyler was breathing hard and sweating. The crowd had gone from cheering for him to murmuring in confusion. This wasn't how Tyler's fights usually went. His opponents typically got overwhelmed by his aggression and size, but Marcus seemed completely unfazed. Tyler tried a different approach. He rushed forward to grab Marcus and wrestle him to the ground. But as Tyler reached out, Marcus caught his wrist and used a simple defensive move his grandfather had taught him. He turned Tyler's own force against him, spinning him around and letting him crash into the chain-link fence behind the court. Tyler hit the fence hard and bounced off, landing on his knees. For the first time in his life, he looked confused and scared instead of confident and threatening. The crowd fell completely silent, shocked by what they were seeing. "How did you do that?" Tyler gasped, struggling to get back to his feet. "I don't want to hurt you," Marcus said quietly. "We can end this right now." But Tyler's pride wouldn't let him quit. He had never backed down from a fight, especially not in front of the entire school. Getting beaten by the new kid would destroy his reputation and his power over other students. "This isn't over," Tyler growled. He motioned to Jake and Danny. "Get him!" Jake ran at Marcus from the left while Danny charged from the right. The crowd started yelling, some cheering, others warning Marcus to run. But Marcus stayed perfectly still until the last second. Then he dropped low and swept his leg in a circle, knocking both bigger boys off their feet. They crashed into each other and fell in a heap on the asphalt. Now the crowd was in complete chaos. Students were shouting, phones were recording from every angle, and everyone was trying to process what they were seeing. The quiet new kid was somehow handling 3 opponents without breaking a sweat. Tyler got back to his feet, his expensive shirt torn and dirty. His carefully styled hair was messy, and there was a small cut on his cheek from hitting the fence. For the first time in his life, Tyler Brooks looked vulnerable. "You think you're hot stuff?" Tyler yelled, his voice cracking with desperation. "You think beating me changes anything? My father owns this town. He'll have you expelled before tomorrow." Marcus stood in the center of the circle, not even breathing hard. "This doesn't have to be about winning or losing. It can be about treating people with respect." "Respect?" Tyler laughed bitterly. "You want respect? I'll show you respect." Tyler pulled out his phone and started recording a video. "Everyone look at Marcus Williams, the new kid who thinks he can come to our school and disrespect the Brooks family. Let's see how tough he is when my father calls his grandmother's landlord. Let's see how brave he is when his family has to move again." The crowd went quiet. This threat was different from physical fighting. Tyler was talking about using his family's money and power to hurt Marcus and his grandmother. Several students looked uncomfortable, realizing that Tyler was willing to go much further than anyone expected. Marcus felt something change inside him. He had been willing to defend himself physically, but threatening his grandmother crossed a line. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. "Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for everyone who can't protect themselves." "Leave my family out of this," Marcus said, his voice still calm but with an edge of steel. "Or what?" Tyler taunted, still recording. "What are you going to do about it, poor boy?" That's when Marcus noticed something Tyler had missed. While Tyler was focused on threatening and recording, several students in the crowd were recording him too. Sarah Martinez had her phone out, capturing every word of Tyler's threats. So did at least 10 other students who had been victims of Tyler's bullying over the years. Marcus smiled slightly. "I don't need to do anything about it. You just did it yourself." Tyler looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Marcus pointed to the crowd. "Look around. Everyone just heard you threaten to use your father's money to hurt my family because you lost a fair fight. Everyone saw you call him backup when you couldn't win alone. Everyone watched you try to bully someone who was just defending himself." Tyler's eyes widened as he realized what had happened. Phones were everywhere, all pointed at him, all recording his threats and his desperate behavior. For the first time, Tyler Brooks was the one being exposed instead of doing the exposing. "Delete those videos," Tyler shouted at the crowd. "I'm Tyler Brooks. You have to do what I say." But something had changed. Students who had been afraid of Tyler for years were looking at him differently now. They had seen him lose control, seen him get outfought by someone half his size, seen him make threats like a spoiled child instead of handling defeat with dignity. "Nobody has to do anything you say," Sarah Martinez called out from the crowd. "Not anymore." Other voices joined in. "Yeah, who made you the king? Why should we be scared of you? Your daddy can't fight your battles forever." Tyler looked around desperately, but Jake and Danny were still on the ground, and his girlfriend had moved away from him in embarrassment. For the first time in his life, Tyler Brooks was completely alone. Marcus picked up his backpack and started walking toward the edge of the circle. The crowd parted to let him through, but instead of the silence that usually followed Tyler's victories, students were talking excitedly about what they had just witnessed. "Where do you think you're going?" Tyler called after him, his voice high and desperate. Marcus stopped and turned around. "Home to do my homework. That's what I came to school for." As Marcus walked away, the crowd began to break up, but the conversations continued. Students were sharing videos, talking about Tyler's threats and discussing what they had seen. The word was spreading that Tyler Brooks wasn't invincible after all. By the time Marcus got home that evening, his phone was buzzing nonstop with notifications. Videos of the confrontation were spreading through social media faster than gossip in the hallways. Students who hadn't even been at the fight were sharing the footage, commenting, and discussing what it meant for Jefferson High. Marcus set his phone aside and focused on his homework, but his grandmother noticed something was different. "Marcus, baby, you seem troubled tonight," she said, bringing him a glass of milk and sitting down beside him at the kitchen table. Marcus told her everything about Tyler's bullying, the challenge at the basketball court, and the threats against their family. His grandmother listened quietly, her wise eyes never leaving his face. "Your grandfather would be proud of you," she said finally. "You didn't start trouble, but you didn't run from it either. And most importantly, you kept your heart right through all of it." "But Tyler said his father might try to hurt us," Marcus worried. "What if they really can make us move?" His grandmother smiled and patted his hand. "Baby, I've been dealing with bullies a lot longer than you have. Rich folks who think money makes them better than everyone else aren't new to me. But you know what I've learned? Bullies are most dangerous when people are afraid to stand up to them. Once someone shows courage, others find their courage too." She was right. All over town, parents were getting calls from their children about what happened at school. Videos were being shared in family group chats. Social media pages were filled with discussions about Tyler Brooks and his family's behavior. The next morning at Jefferson High, everything felt different. Marcus walked through the front doors expecting trouble, but instead of hostile stares, he got nods of respect from students he had never spoken to. In the hallways, conversations stopped when Tyler walked by, but not out of fear anymore. Students were whispering about his meltdown at the basketball court. In first period English, Mrs. Peterson seemed more confident than usual. When Tyler tried to make one of his usual smart aleck comments, she cut him off sharply. "Tyler, if you have something constructive to add to our discussion about courage in literature, please share it. Otherwise, please listen while others speak." Tyler's face turned red, but he didn't argue back. Several students exchanged glances, surprised by their teacher's new boldness. At lunch, something unprecedented happened. Marcus was sitting at his usual corner table when Sarah Martinez approached with her lunch tray. "Mind if I sit here?" she asked. "Of course," Marcus replied, genuinely happy to have company. Within minutes, Ashley joined them, then two other students who had been Tyler's victims in the past. For the first time in years, students at Jefferson High were sitting together based on friendship instead of fear. Across the cafeteria, Tyler sat with Jake and Danny, but their table was noticeably quieter than usual. Other students weren't gathering around to hear Tyler's stories or laugh at his jokes. Even his girlfriend was sitting with her own friends instead of hanging on his every word. But Tyler wasn't finished yet. During fifth period, Marcus was called to the principal's office. Principal Johnson sat behind his desk looking uncomfortable, with a well-dressed man in an expensive suit sitting across from him. "Marcus, this is Mr. Richard Brooks, Tyler's father," Principal Johnson said nervously. "He wanted to speak with you about yesterday's incident." Mr. Brooks looked Marcus up and down like he was examining a bug. "Son, I understand you had some kind of altercation with my boy Tyler yesterday." "Yes, sir," Marcus replied calmly. "Tyler challenged me to a fight, and I defended myself." "Well, that's not exactly how Tyler tells it," Mr. Brooks said with a cold smile. "He says you started trouble and used some kind of martial arts to hurt him and his friends. That sounds like assault to me." Principal Johnson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Marcus could see that the principal wanted to do the right thing, but was afraid of Mr. Brooks's power and money. "Mr. Brooks," Marcus said respectfully, "I have witnesses and video evidence that shows Tyler threw the first punch. I only defended myself and I never struck anyone. I used defensive moves to avoid being hurt." Mr. Brooks's face darkened. "Don't you get smart with me, boy. I don't care what kind of videos you think you have. In this town, my family's word carries more weight than some nobody from the wrong side of the tracks." That's when Principal Johnson's secretary knocked on the door and entered with a worried expression. "Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are several parents here who insist on speaking with you immediately about yesterday's incident." Through the office window, Marcus could see Sarah Martinez's mother, Ashley's father, and at least 6 other parents waiting in the outer office. They all had their phones out, and they looked determined rather than intimidated. "What are they doing here?" Mr. Brooks demanded. Principal Johnson stood up slowly. "I think we better find out." The group moved to the larger conference room where the parents were already seated around the table. Marcus recognized Sarah's mother as she stood up and addressed Mr. Brooks directly. "Mr. Brooks, we've all seen the videos our children took yesterday. We've heard your son's threats against this young man's family, and we've decided that enough is enough." Ashley's father nodded and pulled out his phone. "Mr. Brooks, your son threatened to use your business connections to force this boy's family out of their home. That's not schoolyard fighting. That's harassment and intimidation." One by one, the parents shared what their children had told them about Tyler's behavior over the years. Stories of bullying, threats, and abuse that had gone unreported because families were afraid of the Brooks family's retaliation. Mr. Brooks tried to interrupt several times, but the parents kept speaking. They had found their courage together, just like Marcus's grandmother had predicted. "Furthermore," Sarah's mother continued, "we've already contacted the school board, the local newspaper, and the district attorney's office. This pattern of behavior ends now." Principal Johnson looked relieved for the first time in years. "Mr. Brooks, in light of this new information, I think we need to have a serious discussion about Tyler's behavior and his future at Jefferson High." Mr. Brooks's face was pale with anger, but he couldn't argue with a room full of determined parents and clear video evidence. "This isn't over," he muttered as he stood to leave. "Actually, it is," said Ashley's father. "We're not afraid of you anymore." Over the next week, changes came quickly to Jefferson High. The school board launched an investigation into Tyler's behavior and his father's interference in school policies. The local newspaper ran a story about bullying and family influence in schools, using Jefferson High as an example without naming specific students. Tyler himself seemed to shrink before everyone's eyes. Without his aura of untouchable power, he was just another student trying to get through high school. Jake and Danny stopped following him around, and his girlfriend started dating someone from another school. Most importantly, the culture of fear that had dominated Jefferson High began to fade. Students spoke up more in class, reported bullying when they saw it, and started forming friendships based on shared interests instead of social hierarchies. Marcus continued to sit by the window in English class, but now his table in the cafeteria was full of friends. Sarah, Ashley, and several other students had formed a close group that looked out for each other and welcomed new students with kindness. 1 month later, Mrs. Peterson assigned a project about heroes in real life. When it was Marcus's turn to present, he stood up and looked around the classroom. "I learned something important this month," he said. "Heroes aren't people with superpowers or special abilities. Heroes are ordinary people who decide to do the right thing even when it's scary or difficult. Everyone in this room has the ability to be a hero just by standing up for what's right and protecting people who need help." The class applauded, and even Tyler, who had been quiet for weeks, gave a small nod of understanding. After school that day, Marcus called his grandmother to tell her about his presentation. "That sounds wonderful, baby," she said. "Your grandfather always said the best victories aren't about beating someone else. They're about making things better for everyone." As Marcus walked home through the tree-lined streets of his neighborhood, he reflected on how much had changed since that first day at Jefferson High. He hadn't set out to be a hero or to change his school. He had simply refused to be intimidated and stood up for what was right. The most surprising change was in Tyler himself. Without his reputation as the school bully, Tyler had been forced to discover who he really was underneath all that anger and entitlement. It turned out that without his father's pressure and his friends' expectations, Tyler was just a confused teenager trying to figure out his place in the world. One afternoon, Marcus was surprised when Tyler approached his table at lunch. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Tyler asked quietly. They walked outside to the courtyard where it all began. Tyler looked nervous and embarrassed, nothing like the confident bully he had been just weeks before. "I wanted to apologize," Tyler said, not meeting Marcus's eyes. "For everything. The way I treated you, the threats against your family, all of it. I was wrong." Marcus studied Tyler's face and saw genuine remorse. "Thank you for saying that. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." "I don't know why I acted like that," Tyler continued. "I guess I thought being feared was the same as being respected. My father always taught me that power was the most important thing, but watching how people look at me now, I realize respect is something you earn, not something you take." Marcus nodded. "It's never too late to change how people see you, but you have to change how you see yourself first." Tyler managed a small smile. "Maybe we could start over? I mean, I understand if you don't want to be friends or anything, but maybe we don't have to be enemies." "I never wanted to be your enemy in the first place," Marcus replied. "I just wanted to go to school in peace." They shook hands, and while they didn't become best friends overnight, the handshake marked the end of the war that had divided Jefferson High. 6 months later, Marcus was elected to the student council on a platform of anti-bullying and student support. Tyler had started volunteering with younger students, teaching them about conflict resolution and the importance of treating others with kindness. The story of their confrontation became legend at Jefferson High, but not for the reasons anyone expected. It wasn't remembered as a fight where someone won and someone lost. Instead, it was remembered as the day the students learned that ordinary courage could change everything. Marcus still practiced his grandfather's defensive techniques in his bedroom mirror, but now it was about maintaining discipline and honoring his grandfather's memory rather than preparing for conflict. The skills were still there if he ever needed them, but he hoped he never would again. And so Marcus Williams's first year at Jefferson High came to an end. He had arrived as a quiet new student trying to avoid trouble and had somehow become a symbol of positive change. But the most important lesson he learned wasn't about fighting or standing up to bullies. The most important lesson was that real strength comes from helping others find their own courage, and that the best victories are the ones where everyone wins in the end. If this story inspired you, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories about courage, justice, and the power of doing what's right. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Every comment helps us reach more people with these important messages. Remember, you don't need special powers to be a hero. You just need the courage to stand up for what's right, and the wisdom to know that real victory comes when everyone grows stronger together.